I think my job has become simpler because of a news report yesterday. Isn't it? Let's try to understand this phenomena of traffic congestion. So let's first try to understand what do we mean by traffic congestion. Now there are many subtle qualitative way we say that we are stuck in a traffic jam. That's very commonly used. So what is the meaning of traffic jam, Then we say the traffic is congested. All this means is that in our mind we have some speed. If I have to go from the Indian Institute of Science to my institute at the other end of the city, for a comfortable standard, I would say it is 35 kilometers, and so I should be able to do it in an hour. So anything more than an hour, we say, oh, it's bad. Because this congestion and traffic jam, etc., is related to our expectation of speed at which we need to travel. So we need to first define that. There has been no discussion in India about what should be the definition of a congestion. Is it number of vehicles per square meter of road surface, or is it average speed across some length, or is it drive time? What is the yardstick for congestion? So in our case study which I am going to present to you today, arbitrarily, because nobody has done this work before, nobody has done any such standardization in this country, we took average speed across a length of the road as indicator of congestion. What we did was we said if in a node to node, that is about 200 meters in Bangalore, Bangalore has got about 200,000 plus nodes, and we said node to node, if there is speed is 5 kilometer or less, we said congestion has occurred. You can question me why you have put 5 not 10, or why you have put 5 not 2.5, but why we put 5 is an interesting story, that the traffic planners, we are not traffic planners. Traffic planners in BMTC, Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation, were assuming between 15 kilometer to 20 kilometer per hour as a kind of a accepted speed. When they were designing the routes for the buses and bus timings, they have something called Form 4, and they were using 15 kilometer to 20 kilometer, that is about 3 minutes per kilometer as an acceptable speed. And in Madras Metropolitan Transport Corporation, now it is called Chennai Metropolitan Transport Corporation, they were also using this 15 kilometers as some kind of an acceptable speed. In fact, IIT Madras in one study, their transport wing in the civil engineering department uses 15 kilometers as something we are happy with. And 12 kilometers they say, oh, it's slow. So we said if 15 kilometers is kind of acceptable speed, then we said 5 kilometers, 1/3 of that speed. That is, if I say that the speeds are normally distributed, this less than 1/3 will be minus 2 sigma. So we said that 5 kilometers is what we will use as indicator for congestion. So congestion we defined as 5 kilometers. If any speed at any point in time is less than 5 kilometers, we say that congestion has occurred. So what we did was that BMTC had implemented a intelligent transport system project in 2015, and they track 6,500 plus buses every 10 seconds. So we get data every 10 seconds from every bus, the position, the direction, the speed. And we get, of course, the route number, the bus ID, so many other stuff. And this is one of a good database because it's about 250 GB per month, these traces. So you have a fairly large amount of data coming to you. And what we also did was, when we did this study, Ola and Uber refused to give us the speed data. They will say, Uber at least said they have a policy of sharing data, but at an aggregated level, but not at the detailed level. Ola simply said, no, we have our own research institute. Ola Research Institute in Delhi will analyze the data. We would not share with you. So we depended upon the BMTC data, who shared all the data with us, continue to share the data. And what we assume, this is our second assumption. The second assumption is that if the BMTC buses in a road are 5 kilometer or less, so we say is congestion, the same congestion will be felt by all the other vehicles. Like a car, an auto rickshaw, or a two-wheeler or something. We felt that it's a safe assumption to make that the speed differential among classes of vehicles during congestion is close to zero. That is, if the bus is driving at 5 kilometer or less, it's unlikely a scooter or a two-wheeler will be going above 30 kilometers. They will be 5 to 6 or 7, but they will also feel the same congestion. So it is sufficient if I analyze the BMTC. Any question here? No. So what we did was that to analyze this data, we have done lots of analysis with this data and subsequent data. There are more than 30 groups of students who worked. I am just presenting one group work. In fact, we have a complete report of some 200 pages of all kinds of work with BMTC data. So what we did for this particular work is, we picked up 3 time intervals, this particular work which I am presenting, 9 to 10, 11 to 12 and 5 to 6. And there have been other groups of students who have done for different time intervals. And we have studied other phenomena also, like bunching and predicting time of arrival, modeling the city, so many things. But in this study we did 9 to 10, 11 to 12, 5 to 6, the idea being 9 to 10 is a kind of peak hour, 5 to 6 is a peak hour, 11 to 12 is off peak hour. And what we did was that in these slots, we made 10-minute slots each, that is 9 to 9:10, 9:10 to 9:20, 9:20 to 9:30, like that. And we took 5-day data, 4 working day and 1 holiday. The idea is to see, is there a difference in a holiday and working day? And we identify all the nodes and the links where the BMTC bus speeds in that 10-minute slot interval was less than 5 kilometers. And these nodes were identified as points. Then we did a density-based scanning method, DB scan, to identify the clusters. The idea basically is that places which have low speed and so congested, do they occur in a cluster or are they randomly distributed? The reason why we wanted to do this clustering was that in case they are randomly distributed, there is very little that a planner or a government can do. Because if the process is random, there is very little we can do, engineering wise or management wise. Whereas if the process is not random and I see clusters, then I can say, oh, these are the hot spots. And these hot spots, what can I do? We will come to the discussion of what can I do at a later stage, but let's first identify the hot spots. So when I looked at scanning, you will find that each one of these points are the points of congestion, nodes which congestion occurs. So what we did was we tried to cluster them, and this is one cluster. This is congestion cluster at Silk Board Junction. Most people will be aware, if you have traveled through Bangalore, Silk Board has become kind of infamous for the congestion there. There even have a kind of TikTok videos on what all you can do when you are waiting for traffic at Silk Board. So we just looked, you see the number of congestion points around Silk Board Junction. So what we did is that we basically arrived at the congestion points, and then we used DB scan to cluster them with 0.1 kilometer as the 100 meter as the epsilon value in the DB scan. That means any point which is within 100 meters of any other point will be clustered together, and then we drew the cluster boundary. So this is one examples of a cluster boundary in Silk Board Junction at a particular time period. So then we did this work for those 5 days across the city. The whole city was taken and identified how many such clusters are possible for each of the 10-minute slot. So 9 to 10 have 6 slots, 11 to 12 is 6 slots, and evening 5 to 6 is 6 slots. So 18 slots. In those 18 slots, all the 6,700 buses, their traces, work out the average speed, apply the DB scan, identify such clusters, identify the cluster boundary. So the idea here is that we wanted to see that how many such hotspots are in Bangalore and where are they located. One of the things which we found here, which was interesting, was at that time when we were doing this study in 2018, there was a proposal to build a elevated corridor from near the Ashoka Hotel to the Hebbal Lake, because they said people going to airport are getting stuck in traffic jams and congestion. So we need this. It was called the steel elevated corridor, to which citizens protested saying we don't need it, so many trees will get cut. There was a lot of debate around that. And when we did this analysis, we found that corridor did not have as much congestion clusters as other places. So if I had used this approach to identify where I should put a corridor, that would definitely was not the corridor. That corridor obviously was based on some intuition or something, saying that maybe a bureaucrat or a minister might have said, I got stuck here, so let me just clear it. But if I do that analysis, that corridor was not in the places where there are congestion available. And then what we did is, since we try to also find out, is the congestion persistent? The idea is that we have got 9 to 9:10, 9:10 to 9:20, 9:20 to 9:30 kind of slot. There are 18 such slots there. So if I do each slot, if I do the congestion, each slot I do the cluster, or this cluster across the time period are same, or they are geographically in the same location. So if you really look at it, different colors show at the clusters at different time, but you would find that more or less my cluster boundaries overlap. That means if there is a congestion at 9 to 9:10, there is also a congestion at 9:20 to 9:30 or 9:40 to 9:50. So this is one in the day. Second is, we did the same exercise to see for the 4 days. Do congestion shift across days? Like Monday congestion happens somewhere, Tuesday it happens somewhere else. No. These congestion hotspots remain congestion hotspots across time and across days. There is a difference between peak and non-peak in terms of number of congestion spots. There is a difference between working day and holiday in terms of number of congestion spots. But the location of the congestion spots and the difference are smaller. The location of the congestion spots do not change either with time or with day. That basically means that the processes that generate congestion are not stochastic. They are not random. That basically gives us a hope that there would be a scientific way of reducing this. Because if it had been purely random, I cannot design any solution. If, for example, that congestion spots in one Monday is quite different from the congestion spots in Tuesday, I have no way of resolving congestions because I don't know the processes. Now, once I know that congestion spots are not generated through random processes but only through stable processes, then I can go to the question of what are those processes which generate congestion and then find out how we can offset that. We will have some discussion on some of that after the end of my presentation. So, we did that exercise and we identified all the hotspots. Where are all the hot? This is a kind of a whole of Bangalore map kind of stuff, and we identified the hotspots where all they occur. And then we also looked at the persistent of hotspots, This is the hotspots that are persisting across the working days. The same place, every day you find at the same time, same kind of congestion, same kind of speeds. So, it is a persistence which I talked about. And then we looked at the variation in the congestion spots. If you really look at it on 1st June, basically the variation 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. graph and then 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. If you really look at it, the minimum congestion is at 135 locations in the city, maximum is at about 165, and the variation across these times. So, at 11 a.m. which is the green, the congestion spots actually comes down. That is, the green graph is the lowest graph, and this is, we basically said at any given time you are only going between 135 to 165. It is not that off peak hours my congestion has become 0 or close to 0. And my congestion spots remains during the working hours, that is from morning 9 till evening 5 or whatever 6 we decided. During that time my congestion spots varies only between 130 to 160 kinds of spots. And the regions also persist, which I showed you earlier. And what we did is we said, okay, we have taken it at 10-minute interval. If we take it at 5-minute interval, does the story change? Instead of averaging speeds over 10 minutes and then identifying congestion spots, if I average over 5 minutes and I does the story change? No, the story doesn't change. We did 5-minute interval also, and we end up with the same regions. We end up roughly with the same number of congestion spots. We end up, there is no change by changing the slot length. 10-minute, 5-minute did not make any difference. So, this is where I will end my presentation, that what we did. Let me see. 1 minute. Yeah. What I will now take up on in my paper which I have provided, I have also given some tables to talk in terms of how does it change between working day and holidays, how does it change. Basically, on a holiday around the same time the congestion spot reduced by about 30%. Instead of 165 places having congestion, I end up having congestion in 120 places. There is only a 30% reduction, which basically shows that there are some systemic systemic issues generating congestion in Bangalore. So I will just, some hypothesis, my students had done some exercise on what is it, and I will just throw it for discussion. I do not have proofs on that, so I am not going to present it, but I'll just show you in the next 10-15 minutes for your discussion what could happen. One, what we found is, why do people travel? People are not traveling for picnic, and not necessarily when there is so much of congestion. It's not fun. People travel, we found with some kind of a sample survey and some random survey, for 5 major reasons. These 5 major reasons take care of close to 95% of all travel within a city. These reasons are work, education, health, shopping and entertainment, social occasion, that is social and religious occasion, marriages, festivals, etc. Out of the 5, commuting for work and education takes almost 2/3 of all travels generated. In fact, in some cases it is even higher. And if you really look at, that is where people like Surendra and others have to help us, town planning. The way zonation has been done in this country, the way permissions have been granted, you find that by nature of the location of the places of work and places of stay, places of education and places of stay, we generate a large amount of commute. To give an example, you just take case of, there is some place called Richmond Circle in Bangalore. How many of you are from Bangalore? So all of you must know where is Richmond Circle, isn't it? Within a kilometer of Richmond Circle, or even less, there is close to 70,000 students attend schools and colleges. Bishop Cotton, St. Joseph's, you have Tracy International, Baldwin, Methodist. You just take Richmond Circle, draw a circle of 1 kilometer, identify the colleges and schools there. You will find that 70,000 students attend these educational institutions. And these education institutions are education institutions which are patronized by middle class and upper middle class families. They are not government schools, they are not municipal schools, they are not schools for poor children. It's one of the prestigious schools there, Bishop Cotton or St. Joseph's or something. And they all commute by vehicles. Auto rickshaws, vans, cars. So if we have to get 50,000 students in a matter of 15-20 minutes or maximum half an hour at some time, and you have to evacuate 50,000 students in a matter of 15-20 minutes, you can try to see what would be the congestion there at that time and how does it repercute. You know, it's like when you throw a stone in a pond, the ripples travel. And if Richmond Circle is the pond and I throw a stone, the ripples travel, the congestion gets propagated. You have another issues like this. We have workplaces where 100,000 plus people work, like place where I work, Electronic City, has 160,000 people working in firms there, and Manyata Tech Park and Whitefield, various places. But the number of people staying close to their workplaces, we are not planned like that. If you take Indian Institute of Science campus, at least half the people who work here live here. So the commute gets reduced. Why is it was not possible for our government to say, wherever I think of an industrial area, I will think it of a joint area where the industry, residences, amusement, education, health and all should be there. Why do we say that Pina is only industry, Electronic City is only industry? In fact, till recently, till about 2004, no licenses were given even for hotels within Electronic City. It has to be only industry. After 2004, when the LCTA Act came, then they are giving permission for the schools and for the hotels and some residences, etc. But out of 160,000 people working there, you have hardly 10,000 people stay there. So you generate commute by these policies. We have another thing which you should take in note. The city, which we did in another study, the city doesn't behave as one city. The city behaves as multiple cities. How do we did that? We did that by looking at, is there a behavioral difference in as we looked at the speeds in different parts of the city at the same time. And we try to do that using one of the autoregressive integrated moving average on bus speeds, one of the machine learning models we use, and we found that it is not possible to model Bangalore as one city. We need to model Bangalore as multiple cities. For example, the southeastern zone of the city behaves completely different when it comes to mobility to the northwest. And this is true of every city. If you take Chennai, how many of you are from Chennai? Anybody? Okay, good. Chennai, there is a clear distinction between North Chennai and South Chennai. People who live in North Chennai, who would preferably work in North Chennai, and slightly lower income group communities there, and they don't travel to South Chennai at all. Similarly, people in South Chennai, I would pick up people in Tyagaraja Nagar or Mambalam or say Mylapore. There may be many people who have not crossed beyond Central Station towards North Chennai. So there, Chennai behaves as if it's a conglomeration of cities, and each city, the mobility is within the city. Unfortunately, Bangalore is unlikely that. Mobility is across the city. A person may be staying in North Bangalore near the Indian Institute of Science, but his office may be in Whitefield or an office may be in Electronic City. So the distance of commute is also longer. So the problem here is not so much saying that can I put another flyover, can I put a public mobility like the train. Now there is also a proposal to change the building bylaws near the transport corridors. Metro has been saying that why not densify development within 1 kilometer of the metro line. Densify by meaning that you change the FSR from the current 2.0 maximum to 4.0, permit high-rise buildings, do not plan for parking, so nobody should have a vehicle, and let people use metro. And you have parking only at metro stations. This is a proposal which is called it has got some corridor based development plan which is under discussion by the government. The public comments were invited, it got over on 20th January. We need to look at the draft reversal. But this is one attempt to say that how people can use public transport. But my view on this is fairly simple, that as long as you have requirement for long distance commuting, like Bombay, people might work in Churchgate or in Flora Fountain or any such area near that their Vidhan Sabha or Secretariat, but they may be travelling from Kalyan. They may be travelling from Virar, Vashi. As long as you have this requirement where the commute distances are going to be longer, whether it is by public transport or by private transport, you are not going to get a handle on congestion. Because the question is, congestion can happen on the last mile connectivity. Even if people stay within the metro line, 1 kilometer of the metro line, that 1 kilometer has to be traveled either by two-wheeler or by foot, and you will end up with some amount of congestion. It might reduce from this current stuff, but it may not do. So I think mobility planning in isolation of a development plan is not going to solve any problem. We have to address the mobility plan as a component of what TCPO or BDA or somebody is doing. Now what is happening is, when they do the comprehensive development plan 2031, which is what is under discussion in Bangalore, they create that plan based on some economic agenda and things like that. Subsequent to that, they then say what should be the mobility plan to achieve that economic agenda or that kind of a development plan. Should I make it transitional zone? Should I make it mixed zone usage? Should I make it this? I have a fundamental difference with planners like that, saying that where does this category came, this zonation? If you really look at traditional Indian cities and their plan, for which we have some data, Varanasi is supposed to be there, who have been surviving for few thousand years. Madurai has been surviving for a few thousand years. Their architecture was this clear separation of residences, businesses, administration, geographically was not an Indian concept. You had what in common parlance now will be knowing as mixed zone. For example, if you take Old Delhi, Lal Killa is the seat of power. You had Jama Masjid is a place of worship, and then you had Chandni Chowk, which is bazaar, and then you had residences. So residences, bazaar, place of worship and seat of power, they were all within walking distance. The clear separation of this, that's why we have failed. In Chandigarh, it was attempted by Luc Corbusier to bring the French planning technology, and he said complete separation. You can't even have a small shop selling kirana and milk in residential area. And you could see that Chandigarh as planned by Le Corbusier and as it has metamorphosed now, you will find that the whole planning of that has failed. So I have a feeling that we need to think of a new planning paradigm if you want to make cities sustainable. Because one of the unsustainability of the city comes from mobility, and if you want to go towards the sustainable city goal, which is one of the SDGs goal, we need to address that with the help of people like Dr. Surendra and others to change the city planning paradigm. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
As a long-time resident of Bangalore, sir, I just wanted to collect your comments about the way the transport corridor planning is happening. For example, Richmond Circle flyover was one of the first flyovers to occur in the city. And one fine day, they decided Residency Road, Richmond Road, they make one way. And all of a sudden, the flyover lost its purpose. And then they put a traffic signal on top of a flyover, and then someone realized that flyovers are meant for dynamic road and static road will again impact the flyover. Something has happened, now they are making it two-way operational. But on the other side, you take the Jayadeva corridor, the flyover, lot of money was invested, built, and now just because the metro development has to happen, they are bringing it down. So what do you have to say about these kind of things?
See, the thing is that we still operate in silos. Traffic police is a silo, city corporation is a silo, BDA is another silo. You have multiple silos. In fact, once I documented 20 silos in Bangalore. You have fire service and emergency response. Problem is that each silo, for whatever be the reason they were created, we have a history of administration. I don't want to go into that. But each silo has also become empires now. BDA is an empire, corporation is an empire. I'll give you a very simple. They don't want to cooperate with each other because they think that by cooperating, somebody's power is reduced, somebody's power is increased. I'll give you a very simple example which is still very difficult for us to get it going. You know the Vijayanagar metro station. From Vijayanagar metro station to the Vijayanagar bus stop, main bus stop, is I think 280 or 300 meters. There was a proposal from BMTC to Metro Rail Corporation saying that why do not you provide a safe corridor from the exit of the metro station to this bus stop so that people can use our bus facilities. Metro Rail said no, we have no money for this. BMTC said okay, we will give you the money, why don't you put that? They said no, we will not put that. BMTC said okay, we will put that, just give us the permission of access. No, it is still under discussion. When both the corporations are headed by Indian Administrative Service officer of the same cadre, Karnataka cadre, still under discussion. You saw the amount of discussion that went on in building from Metro Rail Vishwesvaraya station at, not Vishwesvaraya, Kembegowda station at Majestic to platform 10. 4 years, it is still not completely open for public. It is still not, the idea was that people should come by metro and should have a easy access to a railway station platform so that they can get onto their long distance train and move, or commuter train and move. I think that's the major problem. Corporation doesn't consult traffic police when it creates facilities, traffic police doesn't consult corporation, and there are lots of silly things that happens. For example, you will find this painting on the road, the white paint, yellow paint, pedestrian crossing. As per the current provision, it is a job of the traffic police to paint it, but materials have to be supplied by corporation. The paint has to be purchased by corporation, brush has to be purchased by corporation, given to the traffic police, and traffic police will then have to paint it. I am just saying this, we can all laugh, but reality is that. Unless, despite the fact, I remember that this was realized way back in 1981, and they said no, we should make this organization to talk to each other, and in fact then they felt that it will be good if there is a separate minister for Bangalore. The first minister for Bangalore was Anant Nag in Mr. Hegde's cabinet. Didn't really happen. Then they said no, we will bring one BMRDA so that BMRDA can mobilize and coordinate all the people. Nothing. BMRDA exists and nobody listens to BMRDA. Then they said we will have one what was called Urban Land Transport Planning Authority or thing. They will coordinate everybody, hasn't happened, though it exists. It exists right in the BMTC offices, one more floor. So now they are debating an act called UMTA, Urban Mass Transit Act. And that act is supposed to bring all these agencies together so that they will cooperate together. But the whole question here is a fairly simple stuff. If you really look at the way some other cities have handled this, I'll give you an example of New York. London follows the same thing. New York, all the authorities which operate in New York reports to the mayor of New York. The New York Transport, New York Underground, New York Ferries, New York Police, everybody in New York. When 9/11 happened, it was the responsibility of the mayor of the New York to handle that. Of course, he called in the federal emergency response team, but the decision making was Bloomberg, mayor. Currently, we do not have such a structure. London follows. The traffic for London, TfL, reports to Mayor of London. And this has been the structure across the world. You take Amsterdam, you take Stockholm, you take any city. Whereas here, the reporting structure is not to the mayor. Mayor, in fact, is considered to be just some ornamental figure here and there. He has 1 year time. In the 1 year, 3 months, he will be visiting various wards. Last 3 months, he will be featured with some send-off functions at various wards. So he has only 6 months in between, and nothing much happened. Commissioner Corporation, nobody listens to. So we have independent parallel structure. BWSSB will report to the Minister for Water Resources. BMTC reports to Transport Minister. So that's major problem. We have created silos, we have created empires. Unless they get destroyed, you are not likely to solve any such problem. You take the National High School flyover, utilization is very, very poor. There is more vehicles below the flyover than near the flyover, but we just spend money on that. Any other question? Yeah, you have.
We go there very rapidly and the vehicles start moving very slow. So we'll have to go through 2 or 3 cycles of traffic signal change.
Yeah.
And this is one of the major reasons for here.
So there is comes under traffic engineering. There is the standard setting authority called the Indian Road Congress. Indian Road Congress sets standards on where to construct road humps and what should be their design and all that, completely standardized by IRC, which is under the Ministry of Surface Transport. But the problem here is the road hump requirement is essentially comes from multiple sources. Municipal councillors say, oh, put a road hump here because there is too much of traffic, people are all zipping past. Resident says, I want a road hump here because there is. Then traffic police says that here there has been over speeding, so put a road hump here, etc. So once some request like that comes, the corporation just builds a road hump completely unscientifically. There is no uniformity in design. The width and you might find that they have created rumble strips using solidifying paint all over the place. The idea of basically saying that towards approaching the junction, we should get the people to reduce speed. Without realizing that people do not have any further speed to reduce, they are already at 5 km/h, what will they reduce it further? Why do you need those rumble strips? But you put rumble strip. That's the problem. If people follow the IRC guidelines and standards completely, they don't have the statutory provision, they cannot enforce. It's guideline and standards. Then you would not have that problem. All intersections are badly engineered. You would have a traffic signal behind which there will be a transformer. Places like that. They are badly engineered. The thing is, as I was explaining to him, it's all multiple departments doing multiple jobs without even talking to each other. Yeah.
So what I observed, this is case studies. Actually, it's nothing to do with the and also the population. So Bangalore is having almost 1.3 crore population. 80 lakhs, more than 80 lakhs vehicle population. So this depending on this, we don't have any lane discipline things. So, and what is your really recommendations to the government how to minimize this kind of traffic junction for presently we are facing in Bangalore city?
See, I am not that big person to make recommendations to government. I can only discuss a few things with you. Let's look, see, we keep putting blame on the population and putting blame on the number of vehicles. There are cities which are comparable to us across the world. London is even a bigger city than Bangalore. Why is it London not there in the top 10 list? New York is even bigger than Bangalore. Why New York is not there? So it is nothing to do with your population. On road lengthwise and road surface widthwise, Bangalore has more roads than London. It's not an infrastructure problem. The problem is that how do you organize various activities of the citizen? For example, if you really look at places like New York or Boston, there are staggered working hours. Different kinds of people start working at different times. Given in winter in Stockholm, schools start at 7:30 in the morning. When -2 degree temperature or -10 degrees temperature, you can see children walking to the school at. So they stagger your working hours at various time. They address various issues. If Amsterdam, they have a thing saying that all the service provider like a carpenter or a plumber or electrician, their working hours is 7 to 3:30. They should start their work by 7 wherever they have to go, and they should come back by return back home by 3:30. So one is a staggered working hours that could greatly help. Second is this whole question of trying to build campuses in future. When I give a permission, now they are trying to build at near the airport, Bangalore Information Technology Investment Region or something with the help of South Korea. 5,000-6,000 acres have been acquired and some work is going on. It is called ITIR, Information Technology Investment Region. Why not make it as a completely contained unit? You have provision, like a township. You know, if you really look at it, we are not new to township. Tata Nagar, Jamshedji Tata in Jamshedpur, it's a completely contained township which services that area very well. You have the mines, you have the steel mill, you have the school, you have the hospital, you have everything. And in public sector, we have so many such integrated township. Neyveli is a good example in Tamil Nadu, where you have the workplace, everything is in self-contained. Like the Indian Institute of Science campus. You have the school, you have the hospital, you have everything within the campus. Why are we not promoting that? Like the ITIR, within the ITIR 5,000 acres, I have no provision for any of these. Outside, there are people now acquiring farmers' land and say, I am only 30 minutes from ITIR and why not have that in the master plan for ITIR, saying that this is the area for residences, this is the area for this, build townships like that. When I was talking this to some senior government officers, they said, no, now what happens is, in every family, both husband and wife has to work. So if husband lives close to his office, wife may have to commute that, so you are not reducing commuting problem. I said I am reducing commuting problem by half. Now both people have to travel. Like Manyata Tech Park, 1,20,000 people work. If I had built places for about a family of 1 lakh people to live around Manyata Tech Park within half a kilometer, I don't have to have people traveling all over the place to the Manyata Tech Park. Uttam is a classic example. No? He is sitting here. He works in our institute. His spouse works in Manyata Tech Park. Now they have 2 houses. He lives in near the institute. She lives here. Only on weekend they meet together. Isn't it? And it's not an isolated case. There are many such cases where people who have owned house in Whitefield have now rented house in Frasertown. So that's where the thing comes. We cannot think in a very conventional basis. We have to actually think in completely different way.